Hello, guys, and welcome back to the fanfic reread project. In this episode, we will be finishing our reread of my original Hunger Games fanfic, The Tribute from District 12. We're going to be starting with Chapter 9 of Part 2. Rue promptly asks me if we can move our camp somewhere else. I oblige. We have to make way for the hovercraft anyway. We gather the rest of our things and move out of there. We travel as far as we can before night falls. We're even deeper than we were before. All of the trees are tall and black, and it's impossible to tell them apart. The death recap begins above us. It only shows two pictures, the boy from 3 and the girl from 4. Once the seal disappears from the sky, everything is silent. Rue curls into my side and falls asleep, the same way Prim does. Prim. I've been so occupied with staying alive that I haven't thought about her. I wonder how she's doing. I know she's being fed, Gail's seeing to that. And this time, I feel as though I can trust my mother not to lose touch like she did when my father died. But I know she must be worried about me. I feel like the entire Tracker Jacker ordeal was featured. I'm sure they featured the destruction of the pyramid as well. I hope she's seen that. The careers will know that whoever destroyed their supplies is still alive now. In the morning, they'll probably begin their hunt. I feel like I might be their target. Of course, there are still 10 of us left, and we've evened the playing field. They've been thirsting for my blood since day one, but now it's anyone's game. So quickly, for anyone who may have had like a gap between listening to the last episode and listening to this one, the very end of the last chapter ended with the District 4 girl stumbling out of like the brush and falling down dead in front of Katniss and Rue, which is why they're moving camp. And we're actually about to talk about that again, but I just wanted to remind you guys before I kept going deeper into this. Something's nagging at me. The girl from District 4, how did she die? The careers were by the lake when I saw them last. I don't think Foxface would have come that far into the forest without incentive, not alone. There's still Peeta and Thresh. The two of them could hold their own in this forest easily. They could have come for her, and her partner must have escaped. That's my last thought as I fall asleep. We wake up to a gray sky in the morning. I can't help but think that this is somehow a reward for the show we put on yesterday, at least in terms of temperature, anyway. Less sunlight means it'll be harder to see on the ground here. Can't make things too easy. So, two things, actually. Number one, I'm pretty sure I mentioned last episode that there is a reason why we see the District 1 kids and the District 2 kids are still teamed up at the point that they are. It starts to throw a little bit of mystery on not only this, but the next big event that's about to happen, which I spoiled last episode for those of you who don't know about the Hunger Games, so... But number two, I think I may have brought this up, but it is funny still to me that Katniss just assumes that the game makers are making the weather the way that it is, when she doesn't really have any proof of that. I mentioned it when talking about the weird time discrepancies. She did comment on one weird time discrepancy, and then she just sort of starts to assume that the game makers are controlling the weather depending on how people are acting, with no real proof of that. Rue and I spend most of the morning hunting to make up for lost time spent planning yesterday's stunt. There are so many strange plants in this area that we have to wander back down the stream. Despite that, we make decent progress. We split up around midday. I go to hunt for some more meat while she tries to find more fruit. I shoot 2 squirrels and another grusling. We'll be set for at least 2 days. Then I make my way back to the stream, to that place we were when I woke up from the nightmares. It's become our unspoken meeting place. But Rue isn't there. Of course, I don't know where she went exactly. It could take a while. An hour passes. Still no sign of her. Now I'm getting nervous. It is a big forest after all, but Rue is smart. She wouldn't get lost. She wouldn't wander far enough to lose track of where she's going. But then where is she? Half an hour, still nothing. I ought to go look for her now. I check the first places that come to mind. The first tree we spent the night in, the site where the third fire was meant to be. Nothing. Of course, there isn't an abundance of fruit there either. I wind my way up the stream until I'm close to the place we spent last night. Nothing. What could be keeping her? This is a forest. There's got to be more animals in here than the few birds we've seen. Terrible, silent creatures slinking around the shadows, waiting to attack us when we're most vulnerable, which is right now. As I keep traveling upstream, I get more worried. Could someone have found her? Are they torturing her? Or using her as bait to lure me in? No, we're up in the one place that it seems everyone else in the games is afraid to go, except Thresh and Peeta, probably. Maybe she's found them, which means we'll probably switch partners. Rue will go with Thresh and Peeta will come with me. Well, that was bound to happen anyway. We weren't going to be able to stick together throughout the entirety of the games. Eventually, we'd have to split up and hope that someone gets to the other first so we don't have to do it ourselves. But what about that, me and Peeta? After what happened, I'm inclined to think that he might be on my side now. But how can I be sure? What if he didn't get me then because I was too easy? Here I am, poisoned, hallucinating, unable to even hold a knife, and wide open for the kill. But where's the sport in that, he might have thought. Perhaps if he could have convinced the careers of the same thing, he'd still be with them right now. But on the other hand, that doesn't sound like something he'd... My thoughts are interrupted by the sound of someone screaming my name. No, not just someone. Rue. I take off, running in the direction of the sound. I don't know what awaits me, wherever she is, but at this point, I don't care. The screams are getting louder and louder. Soon I'm yelling her name in response, telling her that I'm coming. There's another scream, this one the loudest. I'm getting closer. I already have my bow out when I break into the clearing. There she is, on the ground, covered in a net. Then I see the spear buried deep in her stomach. The place is empty except for us. The killer is already gone. I drop the bow and run to her side. The spear is in too deep, and pulling it out will be more trouble than it's worth. I ache to tell her that she'll be all right, but there's no point. I take her head and gently place it in my lap and brush the hair out of her face. Her voice comes in a hoarse whisper. You have to win. I will. My voice breaks. I will. For both of us, I promise. I don't even try to stop the tears. I clutch her hand tightly, as if that will keep her from dying, but she slips away, quietly. I can see the life leaving her eyes. They're dull where they were once bright and shining. The last thing she does is close them. Suddenly, I find myself singing the 4-note tune she taught me yesterday. It was her song. It ought to be the last thing she hears. Then she's gone, and the cannons fire. I lay her head gently on the grass. They'd want me to go now so they can take her. But even as I stand, I can't bring myself to leave. She sat by me for over a day in a place where all manner of thing could have taken both of us, on the ground where we were most vulnerable. She risked her life for me before we'd even made an alliance. It feels wrong to leave, but there's no reason to stay. She won't come to tomorrow. She won't be waking up at all. Peeta's voice sounds in the back of my head. I want the Capitol to know that I'm not just a pawn, that I'm more than just a piece in their games. His words finally resonate. I want them to know that Rue is a person whose death should be honored, that she was more than just a form of entertainment. I want them to know that someone cared about her, that I cared about her. There are wildflowers growing around the edge of the clearing, in soft blues and purples and white. I pick them all and decorate her body with them. Chains of blossoms covering her chest, a wreath of them in her hair, blooms covering the place where the spear sits in her belly. At the last moment, I remember my pin. I take it off and fasten it to her shirt. It'll mean something to her relatives. Madge will understand. I stand again and step back from her. It's absolutely breathtaking. The grayish light of the sun illuminates her and makes it look like the flowers are giving off their own soft glow. Then the mockingjays begin repeating her song. I raise the 3 middle fingers of my right hand to my lips and then to the sky. Then I turn and go, without looking back. I just wanted to pause to say that I literally have no comment on anything that we're reading. I know this is probably the longest stretch of just reading that we've done in a while, but I actually really like this. Rue's death scene is really moving. I kind of want to give that over to Suzanne Collins, but like I did say before multiple times, I was paraphrasing, so for that, I did pretty well. All of the stuff that Katniss was just thinking about in the woods, again, Katniss has some of the most engaging thought or inner monologue of any character in any of the fics that I've read recently. I think so far the only characters who have come close to even having similar engaging thoughts are characters in Profs 2.0, which I think we will be getting to in 5 stories. But yeah, I actually like this a lot. I did say before, I think that the ending parts, that's like my favorite part of the story. I spend the rest of the day in a hazy state. I don't even realize where I am until I've reached the 3rd fire again. I decide to cook the squirrels over it. There's no point in having it sit here anymore. I know the smoke might attract other tributes. We picked the wood so the smoke would be extra thick. It's like a giant flag broadcasting my location. But they won't come. Not one of them. This is the 2nd death that's happened in this forest. They won't even touch it. Not even the careers. Not even for me. Night seems to fall even earlier due to the overcast sky. The tree we spent the night in is close, but I can't bring myself to sleep there. I wander upstream, past the place we were last night. When I finally stop, I feel as though I've wandered into a dream. I've reached a grove of some sort. There's one tall ironwood standing like a sentry at the very edge of where I entered. I don't recognize the rest. There are gray-green ones with branches covered in pines, and ones that looked as if they were fashioned from gold with rich brown leaves. One that shines silver in the gray light of the moon, its branches covered in white blossoms, and yet another, black as night, its leaves an impossibly dark blue. I climb into one of the gold ones and prepare my bed for the night. There are only 8 of us now, 8 people I have to face. And I don't even know which one killed her, which one to look out for, to hunt for. But whoever they are, I'll find them. When the death recap plays, there's only one picture. It's Rue. It's just Rue. And that is the end of chapter 9 and the end of part 2. Holy shit. That was good. Oh my god, what a relief. This story, it's really weird, but this story does actually get progressively better as you read through it. Like, you start at the beginning. I remember reading those first few chapters. I was like, this is really dry. But once you get to the capital, things start to get a little bit more interesting. And then once Katniss gets in the arena, things start to get even more interesting. And then the further you get into the story and the more we start to diverge from the source material, that's when shit really starts to pop off. And this is like that area that we're in now. The moment that I think chapter 8 ends and Katniss kind of or not chapter 8, chapter 7 ends, and Katniss gets thrown back from the bush and stuff, but her back is fine, and she's able to, like, climb that tree. All bets are off. I kind of gave my assessment before, but yeah, this chapter has a lot of really good stuff. That ending, like, those last few lines... And that echo back to the "it's Rue, it's just Rue" thing, that was really well used, I have to say. The only problem I have with this chapter is when Katniss wanders into this grove of trees. So, remember when I kept talking about how there was one thing that comes from A Song of Ice and Fire that really doesn't fit into the story the way that, like, the setting hints do? This is what I was talking about. So basically, this grove of trees is meant to be a grove of trees that all showed up in A Song of Ice and Fire, which feels like complete and utter overkill when it comes to references. Like, it was one thing for Katniss to run into like an ironwood in the woods. It didn't make sense, but it's like, okay, one tree. Wow, okay, good. But this is multiple trees. Now, the one thing that it does have going for it is that I think at least 2 of the trees mentioned here, maybe 3, like a few of the trees were things that I kind of pulled out of my ass based off of trees that exist in the series but are never actually described. So, actually it is 3 of them. I have no idea which tree the one with the satiny bark is supposed to be, but the gray-green ones, those are sentinel pines, which are mentioned very prominently in chapters that take place in the north. So they're common up there. Yet again, another tree that wouldn't even be at this latitude, and yet is in the arena. The gold ones with rich brown leaves, those are I don't remember the name of the trees, but they're the trees that the bows that people from the Summer Islands use. So whatever the name of that tree is, that's what those are. Again, the satiny bark and white blossoms, I have no idea what that is. And then the one that's black and has leaves that are dark blue, that is supposed to be the tree that Shade of the Evening is made from. Which again never shows up on screen, but you could assume because we learned that the Shade of the Evening is made from the leaves. It's just a bit much, especially because up to this point this story has been fairly realistic, and then we're suddenly introducing a bunch of weird like Technicolor trees into the story. And then there's also one more tree that's going to show up that you would have definitely pegged as like, oh yeah. And quite frankly, I think even though again it doesn't make sense that this is here, if it had been that one tree, it would have been like, okay. But all of these trees plus that one, it's like, really? But that's literally the only problem I have. So let's move on to chapter 1 of part 3. This will be the last complete chapter that we're going to read because chapter 2 I never actually finished. I'm slightly surprised at what I see when I wake up. Somehow I'd convinced myself that what I'd seen, the place I'd wandered into, was just a dream. But here it is, right in front of me, the trees in their seemingly impossible colors, the stream sparkling in the sunlight. I just wish Rue could see it. A cold, hollow feeling settles inside me. I force myself to get out of the tree, to look for some berries, some kind of fruit. Fruit. No, I can't do that. I need to eat. I can't give up. I chew on a squirrel leg and start downstream, and I manage to find a few things. More rosemary, an apple tree, and another bush full of small blackberries that I can't remember the name of, even though I know they're edible. Then I start wandering again. It seems in no time I found myself by the tree I hid in yesterday. I snap out of my malaise just in time to witness today's event, the careers finally splitting up. Hold on. That didn't happen yesterday. That happened the day before yesterday. When she's talking about the tree she hid in, she meant after they blew up the pyramid of food, which we established very clearly happened the day before the last chapter happened. That's a small, snafu, I'm pretty sure, though. I decide to climb into the tree and take this in. Besides, if I don't, I'll end up aimlessly walking around. At least I won't be walking into the hands of my enemies. I'm surprised they lasted even this long, especially after the explosion. Then again, the two from District 1 were probably just as scared of going as they were of staying. However, it seems they've been able to keep it together for the 2 days. Oh, yeah, so it was definitely a writing snafu. At the very least, it seems the split is mutual. Speaking of that, before we go on, actually not speaking of that, but I wanted to pause real quick because I wanted to mention something that kind of struck me. That has never struck me before, but it never had reason to. So the part when Katniss is sitting in the tree and she's like, man, this place is so beautiful. I wish Rue could see it. And then she gets really fucking sad. And she's like, no, I have to get up. And then she gets sad because she thinks about fruit because the last thing that Rue was doing before she died was looking for fruit. That really hit me because I lost a very important family member to me a few months ago from when I'm recording this, which is July. And I had that happen to me. I was thinking about syrup and then I got fucking sad because I was like, shit, they love syrup. Oh man. And then I was like, wait, what? But it's weird coming back to this now, having had that experience myself. And then I'm reading that and I'm like, wow, that's really realistic. Whereas before I just kind of passed it by. And I put it in, it makes sense. It's the kind of thing where it's just no, you can't dwell on that. But I don't think it ever really registered to me that that's something that actually it really hit me this time. And I just wanted to point that out because it struck me. And I don't know if anyone else has had this experience. I'm assuming that you have. I'm sure it's very normal. Their camp is still by the lake. The pair from District 1 have got their packs, and they're just turning to leave when the girl stops. She turns back toward the camp, folds her hands, and does a short bow. Cato gives a small nod, and then they're off again, heading towards the tree line. I hop down from my tree and go back into the forest. I'm not feeling up to a confrontation at the moment. She thanked him. For what? Forming an alliance? For not killing them? Ah, yes. Thank you for not snapping me in half when I haven't done anything to you. Does she really hold him in such high esteem that leaving with her life is something to thank him for? I can't believe it. It's one thing to have a leader, but he lords over them. And they let him, all except the District 2 girl, who is apparently the only one with some sense. The way they treat him, like he's royalty. Ugh. Cato and the careers, the Khal and his Khalasar. Now I'm angry. I wander in the forest, stomping around God knows where. I don't run into a soul. After a while, I finally sit down. The weight of the last few days falls on me and settles into my very bones. Rue is gone. I don't know if I can trust Peeta, let alone where I'd even find him. I've taken the lives of 2 people. The careers have split up, but for some reason it doesn't make me feel any better. And there's still Thresh, and Foxface, and the boy from District 4, and I haven't seen any of them in days. It feels all wrong. We've been in this arena for well over a week, and the game makers haven't tried to force us into any confrontation since the forest fire. Usually at this point, they're pulling all kinds of stunts to get things going, sending out different mutated horrors left over from the war, putting out a banquet's worth of food and making us fight for it. Hell, sometimes they create natural disasters just for fun. I find it hard to believe that the audience is sated with seeing only 1 death a day. It feels as though I'm missing something, and I can't even begin to guess what. Alright, so let me pause there. Number 1, again, this is really good. Number 2, the part where Katniss goes off after she sees the District 1 girl bow to Cato always kills me. I love it. What I like about this is, number 1, how it's kind of meta, because I don't want to say I'm commenting on the way I recharacterize Cato, because that's not the point. It is more of a comment on the fact that this boy treats the games as if he is entitled to these certain things, and the other characters kind of go along with it. And you could see it more as a commentary on the differences between the ways people from the career districts treat the games versus people like Katniss, you know? So in that regard, regard, I don't mind that at all. And I see why Kato is different in this, possibly. Though I do think you could have gotten away with it with more of his original personality, but hey. Number two, I think that like all of the drops of Dothraki, which I have graciously kind of avoided throughout this, pale in comparison to Katniss referring to Kato and the careers as the Khal and his Khalasar. That works better than literally anything else. It just sucks because it doesn't make sense that Katniss would speak Dothraki, and it's not like the character she's talking about would be Dothraki either, but like that worked. You know, it's making a comment that calls back to the thing, and I just wish it made sense from a standpoint of world building because it's actually a really good line. But yeah, like I said, the last stuff that we've been reading has been like really decent so far. So let's keep going. It's impossibly dark by the time I return to the grove of trees. I don't even know how I found my way back. I feel as though I've stepped out of a void. I set up in the same golden tree as before. Sleep doesn't come as quickly as I'd like. The image of Rue's body is burned into my mind. That empty feeling settles inside of me again. There are 8 of us, and I have no more allies. It's far too late to team up with someone. In a few short days, we'd have to turn and fight each other. I'm truly alone now. The realization hits me hard. A sick feeling settles in my stomach. Fear, dread, and depression all at once. I can't even cry. When I finally sleep, I have no dreams. That last bit actually reminds me of a bit from, I think, chapter 4 of Batman Begins. Like I said, I actually came back and recorded this after reading that, so I have to comment on it here because I didn't comment on it there. But at the end of that chapter, which is a flashback chapter, it happens the night of his parents' funeral. And the inner monologue mentions that, like, he cries, and then when he goes to sleep, he has no dreams, you know? I don't know if that was something that I carried over from this or not, because it's been so long since I wrote both of these that I don't remember basically anything, except for the few things that I've mentioned so far, but still. Before we go on, though, can I comment on the fact that, and I should have mentioned this before, but there's an entire paragraph where Katniss comments on the fact that the game makers are kind of resting on their laurels here and not doing anything, and she's like, it feels like I'm missing something. And I can't really comment on this until we get to the end of the story. So soon, just not right now. But just pin that. Morning brings back that hollow feeling. Even the sight of this beautiful grove can't shake it. I lay in my tree, motionless, for at least 3 hours. The deaths I've witnessed weigh on me, making it impossible to move. I find myself wondering who did it. Who killed Rue? Cato's been avoiding this forest like his life depends on it, and by extension, his partner. The pair from District 1 only broke off from them yesterday, so it couldn't be them. Thresh wouldn't kill Rue. The thought of it just doesn't sit right with me. Foxface is smart enough to set traps, but I still can't imagine her coming this way. The woods in the west are her domain. She has no reason to leave. That leaves the District 4 boy and Peeta, and I have no idea which of them did it. The day passes much like yesterday. I stay along the stream, not daring to wander too far, lest I run into someone. Afternoon brings a cannon shot. I can't guess for who. I try to keep some semblance of alertness about me. I don't run into a soul the entire time. How is that possible? You'd think someone would come looking for me. We're down to 8, well, 7 now. Are they waiting for me to come to them? Not likely. My 11 could be keeping them away. Or are they leaving me to the elements? Let me get killed by whatever it is they think killed Rue and the girl from District 4. But I'm still here, and I know they know. And I'm alone, too. They know I have my bow and arrows, but they don't know how good I am with them. The last time they saw me was after the Tracker Jacker episode, and I was stumbling around like a fool. So here I am, all alone in the forest, with only a bow and arrows that, as far as they know, I barely know how to use. And yet, no one comes. Is my training score that intimidating? Is Big Bad Kato so scared of the dark? The skies turn to soft indigo when I arrive back at the grove. It's too early to sleep, so I wander around. It really is beautiful. I end up on the opposite side from where my tree is. This side has a different feeling. The silvery trees dominate, and the place seems cast in a bluish light even before the moon is risen. The midnight black trees are more abundant here too, like shadows cast against the lighter ones. A stream runs through this side too, except it's a dark red color. Wait, that can't be right. I follow the stream up until I reach what might be the strangest tree I've ever seen. The bark is white as milk, the leaves red as blood. The wood is weathered and marked, the holes and scars filled with sap, making it look as though it's bleeding. Slightly upstream, the water is clear, reflecting the purple-blue sky. That must be what's staining the water on this side. Alright, so let's pause right here because some shit's about to go down. So, like I said, if I had included this one tree, y'all would have been like, alright. And even that would have been too on the nose, you know? Like, to be honest, if I had to choose a tree, the ironwood wasn't a bad choice to just kind of be like, yeah, this is Planetos, boom, look at that. There it is. However, of course, geographically, it makes no sense. Weirwoods don't seem to grow outside of Westeros. I think what bothers me the most about this not magical, but like the mysterious grove of Technicolor trees is just that it's too much. We've had so many, like, much more subtle and I think much more successful hints that this takes place on Planetos using, like, geography and being vague about it, that you don't need to also throw in the most iconic image of A Song of Ice and Fire besides, like, direwolves. And the other thing that bothers me about it is the implications, because basically none of these trees are native to Essos except, I guess, the Shade of the Evening trees and maybe these silver ones, whatever the fuck they're supposed to be. So it makes you wonder, why is this here? Who planted these? Can you even plant a weirwood tree? And that's why I think you could get away with that one, because as far as we know, I don't even know if you can plant a weirwood, so clearly it would have just been there. But having a grouping of all of these trees in one place implies intention, and that's kind of weird. The game makers did not say, I think it would be cool if we took a bunch of exotic trees and just put them in one grove in the woods. Wouldn't that just be like the shit? And then someone comes in there, the aesthetic. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So clearly it's something that I do that has no Watsonian justification. And that bothers me too, because if you want something to make sense, it has to make sense in universe. I guess it's whatever. Now, like, to be honest, within the bounds of the story, it really doesn't bother me that much. It's just like standing back from a writing standpoint. It's like, why did you do this? But let's keep going. Suddenly, I hear splashing noises. There's a high-pitched scream, which stops abruptly in a sickening gurgle. I whip around, bow at the ready. The girl from District 1 stumbles backward and then falls to the ground, a large knife in her neck, blood spilled all down her front. The sound of the cannon sends me bolting back into the forest. I haven't the slightest idea where I'm going, but I'm not stopping. I smack into branches repeatedly and crash into tree chunks. Jesus Christ! Even tripping won't stop me. I can only hope that darkness is an adequate cover to make up for the racket I'm causing. I'm not even paying attention to what I'm doing anymore. I splash right into the creek, or at least what I think is the creek. That's when I finally stop. With all the noise I was making, whoever killed the District 1 girl could have followed me. I need to move as quietly as possible. I take out my bow and set an arrow even though I can't see. If anyone is out there, they can't see me either. Good. Slowly, I start forward. It feels like every sound has been magnified. My breathing echoes in my ears. This little stream sounds like a rushing river. Every step causes a crashing wave. It's surreal, but if I move any slower, I wouldn't be moving at all. The only solution I can think of is to travel back onto the banks, but that doesn't help. As soon as I exit the water, I can hear my feet slosh through the mud. Even on dry ground, my footsteps pound through my ears. My hyper-awareness has distracted me from noticing where I'm going. I can't hear the sound of the stream anymore. I stop. If this were a normal wood, like the one to the west or the one back home, I feel as though I'd be able to hear everything, from the sound of insects moving across leaves to the quiet footfalls of the smallest rodents. But not here. Everything is deathly silent. Noises that aren't made by me or sounds left unmade. I'd grown to embrace this aspect of it. Nothing to keep me up at night, nothing to attack me. But now it's more disconcerting than ever. What hides in the darkness that surrounds me? What terrible things lie ahead of me, waiting to finish me? Surely I am not alone. That's when I hear something behind me. A boot crunching in the dirt, I think. I turn my bow in the direction of the sound, but there's nothing but darkness. Then it comes again, quickening footsteps. I whip around. I can't even see who it is, but I fire the arrow anyway. I hear it hit the trunk of a tree. I already have another one ready when I hear the voice. Katniss? Oh my god, it's Peeta. And that's the end of that chapter. That's another really decent chapter. I think I outlined everything that possibly could bother me about it, but there are really no specifics to it that really bother me, except maybe the weirwood. Again, I like that this chapter ends with an echo back to a chapter from the beginning of the games. And if I'm remembering correctly, that's actually how chapter 1 of part 2 No, damn. It was how chapter 2 of part 2 ended. So that's cool. I thought it was chapter 1 of part 2, and I was like, oh my God, but it's not. So yeah, this has actually been getting really good so far, but let's move on to chapter 2 of part 3. I don't know whether I should be surprised or not. I figured that he'd been here, but at the same time still hadn't expected to run into him. I lower my bow, but I don't sheath the arrow. There might be others. Peeta? You almost killed me. Look, I know, but Peeta. I feel a damp hand on my arm and jump. We need to move. There might have been someone following me. Who? I don't know, but we need to go now. Find a tree or something. You trust me? We don't have time for this. Let's go. I pull him by the arm and hope I find one we can climb. It's ridiculously dark out here. I almost crashed face first into a tree trunk, stopped only by my arms scraping against the hard bark. I have no idea what kind it is, but it'll do for now. I climb to the top easily, as I always do. Pete is slower, but he's decent. The death recap begins to blare out above us. I begin to set up my sleeping bag as it does. I already know there's been 2 deaths today. I don't really care who. I can see Peeta staring at the sky a few branches above me. I do catch the last picture, though. It's Thresh. I see a flicker of emotion cross Peeta's face, but then it's gone, quick as it came. Maybe Rue was right. Then again, maybe I'm seeing things. Okay, so let's pause here because, that line, I see a flicker of emotion cross Peeta's face, but then it's gone, quick as it came. A similar line shows up in Curse of the Black Pearl, which we will be reading in a while. But when we get to that story, I'll point it out for you guys. Please let me remember this. I also think that's shown up in a few other stories. I think I've used that quite a few times. I really see Peeta for the first time. In the light of the seal, he's a gruesome sight. There are purpling bruises on his face and neck, big red scratches on his arms, and if I'm not mistaken, a few bite marks adorning his collarbone. I wonder how he got all those. Yeah, I wonder. He comes back down once the sky goes dark. It's deathly silent, save for his voice. I wonder how she died. Who? The girl from District 1, I say, pulling a squirrel leg from my pack. I need to cook the other one by tomorrow. She got stabbed. You saw? Yeah, that's why I ran. And that's the end of the tribute to District 12. So, like I said, this chapter, fine for what it is. There's not much to it, so it's kind of hard to judge. But I guess nothing bothered me. It's like a page and a half, if that. So, the tribute from District 12. That wasn't an adventure. This story did start out really dry, but it got a lot more interesting once I started to deviate from the script and start writing my own story. I think that's what really helps it. Now, the way I write fanfic, specifically because I tend to do a lot of retellings of stuff, there's always content from the original story that shows up in it. However, I have found, especially in my old stories, that when I deviate from what's in the source material, that's when things tend to get more interesting. In this story, it's more pronounced because the source material was prose. So once I deviated from the source material, I stopped being able to paraphrase another writer's writing. Whereas some of my later stories are based off of movies, so it's just a script, and it's more about moving away from the actual events rather than like literal writing. So like I said, it starts out dry and ends up a lot more interesting toward the end. Another thing, which I forgot about completely until right now, even though it came up all the other times I reread this, I do remember thinking back in the day that the writing in the Hunger Games was too quote-unquote purple, which is basically, if you've ever heard of the phrase purple prose, it's when you write like really lush writing, but in a way that's just kind of like Jesus Christ. Like I think the best example I can think of, though I've never read but I've heard he is like this, is H.P. Lovecraft. I purposefully do not read H.P. Lovecraft, so like I said, can't back it up, but my point of reference for that is like Angela Carter, but more people have heard of H.P. Lovecraft. And if you've read the Hunger Games, you're probably like, what? Because the actual Hunger Games is what's considered beige prose. Because even though it has definitely like writerly flares to it to keep the actual prose interesting, for the most part, the characters sound like real people. A lot of the story is written in, some people call it sentence fragments, but in reality, the sentences tend to be short, which is something that we actually saw a lot in here. So I'm willing to bet that I got that from the story and then made it worse by making the writing even more boring. Because when I was paraphrasing, and part of the reason why I paraphrase so heavily is because I was like, well, this writing is way too formal for this. I wanted to sound like real people and real like 16-year-olds, but instead I ended up making it sound more boring. which is why I think after a while I do remember giving up on that. About the point where Rue hands Katniss the apple, which is really weird, but I do remember that being sort of a point where I was like, well, we can't just say the red apple and then just leave it at that. That's boring. And I was just like, ah, fuck it. And so from that point on, there's been a lot more like vivid description in this story. So yeah, that's the story. I guess this is a good time to possibly talk about how this story was supposed to end. The problem with that is that there is still a lot of plot crossover with this story and its later draft, despite the fact that that version has a lot of differences, especially in the games. So I'll just keep it brief then. So basically, what was supposed to happen is that at a certain point in the story, Katniss was supposed to find out that the kid who had killed Rue was the boy from District 4. Though I do think that if you're paying attention to Katniss's deductions and then you see what happens here, you probably deduced that already. So it's not that much of a spoiler. What was important is that, like, toward the end of the story, he was supposed to end up taking out all the careers and then facing off with Katniss and Peeta at the end, where he would have been taken down by the both of them. And the kind of the point of that was just that he wanted all of the glory for himself, so he turned on everyone he teamed up with, including his own partner. I don't really remember if there was, like, a point to why he did that, or if it was just like, see, this is what the games does to people. Which it could have been, but I don't remember. So the other thing that I did want to reveal is the Peeta thing, because you may have noticed before that there were some mentions, like the night of the interviews, he didn't show up at dinner, and then Candace is like, what are those? Like that little thing. What that was supposed to be, along with the infamous, that's not really my thing line from the interviews, is that Peeta was supposed to have a background relationship with Thresh. This story doesn't do a super good job of seeding it, but there are definitely like seeds thrown kind of haphazardly throughout the story. Like I said, unfortunately, this story, I was too busy trying to just get down stuff so I could keep going and make the word count, that I included the part, like if it was supposed to be, like I said before, a thing where Peeta falls in love with another tribute and there's like that tragedy in and of itself, but the added tragedy of having to pretend that he doesn't have these feelings for this person because he has to pretend to be in love with Katniss. And you could have done something with that, but this story, it felt more like, wouldn't it be funny if Peeta was in love with Thresh? But then I was like, oh, but we need to keep the crush thing in here, so. Which is funny because you have all those hints, but they weren't going to go anywhere. And I feel like I should have just excised that entire like plot line from the story, or just been more careful about adding Peeta's feelings into it and just maybe cut that stuff. Again, this is the first draft. I didn't get to go through and refine the story or anything like that. I was going to say I'm sure I would have, but in later edits I took a different approach to this. So that's basically it. I don't remember the exact events that were supposed to happen after this like I do with some of the later versions, but hey. So that is the tribute from District 12. I hope you enjoyed me reading this. I tried to make it as interesting as possible with my voice when the story itself wasn't. Next reread is going to actually be Profs 1.0. I feel like I may have said that Batman Begins was next a few times, but it's definitely Profs 1.0 first and then Batman Begins. So I will see you for that. You like this video, like it on the YouTubes, and then subscribe to my channel and watch some of the other videos. This whole series will be up now, so you can go back and relive the adventure. Or you can watch some of my other videos. And I will see you guys for Profs 1.0 in our next reading adventure. Bye!